I have read in the records of the Arabians' reverend fathers that Abdallah the Saracen, when questioned as to what on this stage of the world, as it were, could be seen most worthy of wonder, replied, "There is nothing to be seen more wonderful than man." In agreement with this opinion is the saying of Hermes Trismegistus, "A great miracle, Asclepius, is man." But when I weighed the reason for these maxims, the many grounds for the excellence of human nature, reported by many men, failed to satisfy me. That man is the intermediary between creatures, the intimate of the gods, the king of the lower beings, by the acuteness of his sense, by the discernment of his reason, and by the light of his intelligence, the interpreter of all things, the interval between fixed eternity and fleeting time, and as Persians say, the bond, nay, rather the marriage song of the world. On David's testimony, but little lower than the angels. Admittedly great though these reasons be, they are not the principal grounds, that is, those which may rightfully claim for themselves the privilege of the highest admiration. For why should we not admire more the angels themselves and the blessed choirs of heaven? At last it seems to me I have come to understand why man is the most fortunate of creatures, and consequently worthy of all admiration, and what precisely is that rank which is his lot in the universal chain of being, a rank to be envied not only by brutes, but even by the stars, and by minds beyond this world. It is a matter past faith, and a wondrous one. Why should it not be? For it is on this very account that man is rightly called and judged a great miracle, and a wonderful creature indeed. But here, fathers, exactly what this rank is, and as friendly auditors, conformably to your kindness, do me this favor. God the Father, the supreme architect, had already built this cosmic home we behold, the most sacred temple of his Godhead, by the laws of his mysterious wisdom. The region above the heavens he had adorned with intelligences, the heavenly spheres he had quickened with eternal souls, and the excrementary and filthy parts of the lower world he had filled with a multitude of animals of every kind. But when the work was finished, the craftsman kept wishing that there was someone to ponder the plan of so great a work, to love its beauty, and to wonder at its vastness. Therefore, when everything was done, as Moses and Timaeus bear witness, he finally took thought concerning the creation of man. But there was not among his archetypes that from which he could fashion a new offspring. Nor was there in his treasure houses anything which he might bestow on his new son as an inheritance. Nor was there in the seats of the world a place where the latter might sit to contemplate the universe. All was not complete. All things had been assigned to the highest, the middle, and the lowest orders. But in its final creation, it was not the part of the Father's power to fail as though exhausted. It was not the part of his wisdom to waver in a needful matter through poverty of counsel. It was not the part of his kindly love that he who was to praise God's divine generosity in regard to others should be compelled to condemn it in regard to himself. At last the best of artisans ordained that that creature to whom he had been able to give nothing proper to himself should have joint possession of whatever had been peculiar to each of the different kinds of being. He therefore took man as a creature of indeterminate nature, and assigning him a place in the middle of the world, addressed him thus: "Neither a fixed abode, nor a form that is thine alone, nor any function peculiar to thyself have we given thee, O Adam, to the end that according to thy longing and according to thy judgment thou mayest have and possess what abode, what form, and what functions thou thyself shalt desire. The nature of all other beings is limited and constrained within the bounds of laws prescribed by us. Thou, constrained by no limits, in accordance with thine own free will, in whose hand we have placed thee, shall ordain for thyself the limits of thy nature. We have set thee at the world's centre, that thou mayest from thence more easily observe whatever is in the world. We have made thee neither of heaven nor of earth, neither mortal nor immortal, so that with freedom of choice, and with honour, as though the maker and moulder of thyself, thou mayest fashion thyself in whatever shape thou shalt prefer. Thou shalt have the power to degenerate into the lower forms of life which are brutish. Thou shalt have the power, out of thy soul's own judgment, to be reborn into the higher forms which are divine. O supreme generosity of God the Father, O highest and most marvelous felicity of man, to him it is granted to have whatever he chooses, to be whatever he wills. Beasts, as soon as they are born, so says Lucilius, bring with them from their mother's womb all they will ever possess. Spiritual beings, either from the beginning or soon thereafter, become what they are to be for ever and ever. On man, when he came into life, the Father conferred the seeds of all kinds and the germs of every way of life. Whatever seeds each man cultivates will grow to maturity and bear in him their own fruit. If they be vegetative, he will be like a plant. If sensitive, he will become brutish. If rational, he will grow into a heavenly being. If intellectual, he will be an angel and the Son of God. And if happy in the lot of no created thing, he withdraws into the center of his own unity, his spirit made one with God in the solitary darkness of God, who is set above all things, shall surpass them all. Who would not admire this our chameleon, or who would more greatly admire aught else whatever? It is man who Asclepius of Athens, arguing from his mutability of character and from his self-transforming nature, on just grounds, says was symbolized by Proteus in the Mysteries. Hence those metamorphoses renowned among the Hebrews and the Pythagoreans. For the occult theology of the Hebrews sometimes transforms the holy Enoch into the angel of divinity, whom they call Malach Adonai Shebaot, and sometimes transforms others into other divinities. The Pythagoreans degrade impious men into brutes, and, if one is to believe Empedocles, even into plants. Muhammad, in imitation, often had this saying on his tongue: "They who have deviated from divine law become beasts," and surely he spoke justly. For it is not the bark that makes the plant, but its senseless and insentient nature. Neither is it the hide that makes the beast of burden, but its irrational, sensitive soul. And neither is it the orbed form that makes the heavens, but its undeviating order. Nor is it the sundering from body, but his spiritual intelligence that makes the angel. For if you see one abandoned to his appetites crawling on the ground, it is a plant and not a man you see. If we see one blinded by the vain illusions of imagery, as it were of Calypso, and softened by the ignoring allurement, delivered over to his senses, it is a beast and not a man you see. If you see a philosopher determining all things by means of right reason, him you shall reverence. He is a heavenly being and not of this earth. If you see a pure contemplator, one aware of the body and confined to the inner reaches of the mind, he is neither an earthly being nor a heavenly being. He is a more reverend divinity vested with human flesh. Are there any who would not admire man, who is, in the sacred writings of Moses and the Christians, not without reason, described sometimes by the name of all flesh, sometimes by that of every creature, inasmuch as he himself molds, fashions, and changes himself into the form of all flesh, and into the character of every creature? For this reason, the Persian Euanthes, in describing the Chaldean theology, writes that man has no semblance that is inborn and his very own, but many that are external and foreign to him. Whence this saying of the Chaldeans, Hanorish Dara Sharinas, that is, man is a being of varied, manifold, and inconstant nature. But why do we emphasize this? To the end that after we have been born to this condition, that we can become what we will. We should understand that we ought to have a special care to this, that it should never be said against us that although born to a privileged position, we fail to recognize it and become like unto wild animals and senseless beasts of burden, but that rather the saying of Asaph, the prophet, should apply, "Ye are all angels and sons of the Most High," and that we may not, by abusing the most indulgent generosity of the Father, make for ourselves that freedom of choice He has given into something harmful instead of salutary. Let a certain holy ambition invade our souls, so that not content with the mediocre, we shall pant after the highest, and since we may, if we wish, toil with all our strength to obtain it. Let us disdain earthly things, contemn astral things, and finally, esteeming less whatever is of the world, hasten to that court which is beyond the world and nearest to the Godhead. There, as the sacred mysteries relate, seraphim, cherubim, and thrones hold the first places. Let us, incapable of yielding to them and intolerant of a lower place, emulate their dignity and their glory. And if we have willed it, we shall be second to them in nothing. But by what means is one able to either judge or to love things unknown? Moses loved a God whom he saw, and as judge administered among the people what he had first beheld in contemplation upon the mount. Therefore the cherub, as intermediary by his own light, makes us ready for the seraphic fire, and equally lights the way to the judgment of the thrones. This is the bond of the first minds, the Palladian order, the chief of the contemplative philosophy. This is the one for us to first emulate, to court and to understand, the one from whence we may be rapt to the heights of love and descend, well taught and well prepared, to the functions of active life. But truly it is worthwhile, if our life is to be modelled on the example of the cherubic life, to have before our eyes and clearly understood both its nature and its quality, and those things which are the deeds and labour of the cherubs. But since it is not permitted us to attain this through our own efforts, we who are but flesh and know of the things of earth, let us go to the ancient fathers, who, inasmuch as they were familiar and conversant with these matters, can give sure and altogether trustworthy testimony. Let us consult the Apostle Paul, the chosen vessel, as to what he saw the hosts of cherubim doing when he himself was exalted to the third heaven. He will answer, according to the interpretation of Dionysius, that he saw them being purified, then being illuminated, and at last being made perfect. Let us also, therefore, by emulating the cherubic way of life on earth, by tarning the impulses of our passions with moral science, by dispelling the darkness of reason with dialectic, and by, so to speak, washing away the filth of ignorance and vice, cleanse our soul, so that her passions may not rave at random, or a reason through heedlessness ever be deranged. Then let us fill our well-prepared and purified soul with the light of natural philosophy, so that we may at last perfect her in the knowledge of things divine. And lest we be satisfied with those of our faith, let us consult the patriarch Jacob, whose form gleams carved on the throne of glory. Sleeping in the lower world, but keeping watch in the upper, the wisest of fathers will advise us. But he will advise us through a figure. In this way everything was wont to come to those men, that there is a ladder extending from the lowest earth to the highest heaven, divided in a series of many steps, the Lord seated at the top, and angels in contemplation ascending and descending over them alternately by turns. But indeed, not only the Mosaic and Christian mysteries, but also the theology of the ancients show us the benefits and value of the liberal arts, the discussion of which I am about to undertake. For what else did the degrees of the initiates observed in the mysteries of the Greeks mean? For they arrived at a perception of these mysteries when they had first been purified through those expiatory sciences, as it were, moral philosophy and dialectic. What else can that perception possibly be than an interpretation of occult nature by means of philosophy? Then at length, to those who were so disposed, came that epoptia, that is to say, the observation of things divine by the light of theology. Who would not long to be initiated into such sacred rites? Who would not desire, by neglecting all human concerns, by despising the goods of fortune, and by disregarding those of the body, to become the guests of the gods while yet living on earth, and made drunk by the nectar of eternity, to be endowed with the gifts of immortality, though still a mortal being? Who would not wish to be so inflamed by those Socratic frenzies sung by Plato in the Phaedrus, that by the aurage of feet and wings escaping speedily from hence, that is, from a world set on evil, he might be borne on the fastest of courses to the heavenly Jerusalem? Let us be driven, fathers, let us be driven by the frenzies of Socrates, that they may so throw us into ecstasy as to put our mind and ourselves in God. Let us be driven by them, if we have first done what is in our power. For if through moral philosophy the forces of our passions have by a fitting agreement become so intent on harmony that they can sing together in undisturbed concord, and if through dialectic our reason has moved progressively in a rhythmical measure, then we shall be stirred by the frenzy of the muses, and drink the heavenly harmony with our inmost hearing. Thereupon Bacchus, the leader of the muses, by showing in his mysteries, that is, in the visible signs of nature, the invisible things of God, to us who study philosophy, will intoxicate us with the fullness of God's house, in which, if we prove faithful like Moses, hallowed theology shall come and inspire us with double frenzy. For exalted to her lofty heights, we shall measure therefrom all things that are and shall be and have been in indivisible eternity, and admiring their original beauty, like the seers of Phoebus, we shall become her own winged lovers, and at last, roused by ineffable love as by a sting, like burning seraphim rapt from ourselves, full of divine power, we shall no longer be ourselves, but shall become He Himself who made us.